In October of 2025, Paramount Pictures made a decision that split the internet in half. They announced that Johnny Depp, the 62-year-old actor who spent the better part of a decade fighting allegations of domestic abuse, would play Ebenezer Scrooge in a major holiday blockbuster. The price tag? $10 million. The release date? November 2026. The reaction? Absolute chaos. Some called it a bold artistic choice, others called it disgusting, and somewhere in between, Hollywood placed a bet that audiences are ready to forgive one of the most controversial figures in modern cinema. But the real question isn't whether Johnny Depp can act. The real question is whether Hollywood should have given him the chance in the first place. To understand why this casting matters, you have to understand what Johnny Depp lost. For nearly 20 decades, he was one of the highest-paid actors on the planet. Captain Jack Sparrow made him a household name and made Disney billions. But by 2018, the empire was crumbling. Amber Heard published an op-ed in the Washington Post describing herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse. She didn't name Depp, but she didn't need to. Within days, Disney dropped him from the Pirates franchise, Warner Brothers removed him from Fantastic Beasts, and within months, Depp went from commanding $50 million per film to essentially being unemployable in mainstream Hollywood. What followed was one of the most public legal battles in entertainment history. Depp sued Heard for defamation in Virginia, seeking $50 million. Heard countersued for $100 million. The trial was televised, dissected, memed, and turned into a cultural referendum on truth, celebrity, and who gets to be believed. In June 2022, the jury largely sided with Depp, awarding him $10 million in damages while giving Heard $2 million for one of her counterclaims. Depp called it a victory. His supporters called it vindication. But for millions of others, the verdict didn't erase the evidence. It didn't erase the audio recordings. It didn't erase the photos. And it certainly didn't erase the UK High Court ruling from 2020, where a judge found that Depp had assaulted Heard on 12 separate occasions. That is the man Paramount just handed $10 million and the lead role in a Christmas movie. The film is called Ebenezer, A Christmas Carol. It's directed by T. West, the filmmaker behind the critically acclaimed horror trilogy X, Pearl, and Max Max. The cast includes Andrea Riseborough as the Ghost of Christmas Past, Trammell Tillman as the Ghost of Christmas Present, Rupert Grint as Bob Cratchit, and Ian McKellen as Jacob Marley. On paper, it's a prestige holiday production with serious artistic credentials. Paramount is positioning it as a major theatrical release for November 2026, the kind of film that could dominate the holiday box office if it connects with audiences. But here's what makes this project different from every other Christmas Carol adaptation. Ebenezer Scrooge is not a hero. He is a miser, a cruel, selfish man who abuses those beneath him and cares for nothing except money. The entire story is about him being forced to confront his own cruelty, to face the damage he has done, and to beg for a second chance he doesn't deserve. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Hollywood didn't just cast Johnny Depp in a movie, they cast him as a man who needs to be haunted into becoming better. And they paid him $10 million to do it. The backlash. The announcement didn't just generate headlines, it generated fury. Within hours of the news breaking, social media exploded. On X, users called the casting disgusting, tone-deaf, and a slap in the face to survivors of domestic abuse. One post that gained thousands of shares simply stated, "Johnny Depp is an abuser. We won't be watching." Another user wrote that this wasn't just another independent film nobody would see. This was a major studio production with a massive budget and global distribution. The stakes were different. The message was different. Industry insiders spoke anonymously to entertainment outlets, and their words were brutal. One source called the move disgraceful, accusing Paramount of deliberately attempting to rehabilitate Depp's image rather than prioritizing any sense of accountability. Another insider described it as incredibly tone-deaf, pointing out that the story itself is about reckoning with one's past, and the parallels were impossible to ignore. For many abuse survivors, it felt like Hollywood was taking something painful and turning it into entertainment. But the backlash wasn't universal. Depp's fan base, which remained fiercely loyal throughout the trials, celebrated the news. They argued that a jury had found in his favor. They pointed out that Heard's own credibility had been questioned extensively during the trial. They saw this not as a scandal, but as justice delayed. To them, Depp was the real victim, a man who had been destroyed by a false allegation in a culture that refused to wait for evidence before passing judgment. For these supporters, the Scrooge role wasn't ironic, it was poetic. A man who had been haunted by his past, dragged through the worst year of his life in public, was now given the chance to tell a story about redemption. So, why did Paramount do it? The answer is simpler than the morality. Paramount believes Johnny Depp still puts butts in seats. Before the controversy, Depp was one of the few actors in Hollywood who could open a movie globally on name recognition. The Pirates of the Caribbean franchise earned over $4.5 billion worldwide. Alice in Wonderland crossed $1 billion. Even his darker, smaller films consistently drew audiences. Studios don't cast actors because they like them. Studios cast actors because they make money. But there's a deeper calculation here, and it's about the passage of time. The Virginia trial ended in 2022. By the time Ebenezer hits theaters in November 2026, 4.5 years will have passed. 4.5 years of Depp touring with his band, the Hollywood Vampires, 4.5 years of making independent films in Europe, 4.5 years of slow, careful re-entry into the public eye. Paramount isn't betting that audiences have forgotten. They're betting that audiences have moved on, that the outrage has cooled, that the people who were angry in 2022 have found new things to be angry about, and the people who supported Depp never stopped wanting to see him on screen. This is how Hollywood has always worked. Mel Gibson was recorded making anti-Semitic comments and threatening to burn his girlfriend's house down. A few years later, he was nominated for an Oscar. Roman Polanski fled the United States after pleading guilty to unlawful sex with a minor. He continued winning awards from Europe for decades. The list goes on. Hollywood has a remarkable capacity for forgiveness when the talent is profitable enough. The question has never been whether Johnny Depp deserves a second chance. The question is whether audiences will pay to watch him take it. Make no mistake, this is Depp's last real shot at major studio stardom. According to sources close to the production, everyone involved understands what's on the line. One insider put it bluntly, Johnny understands the assignment. This isn't another Pirates of the Caribbean situation where he can just waltz in after drinking a bottle of red wine with lunch. In Ebenezer, he has to prove that he's back as a major artist. If he doesn't deliver, if there are reports of lateness, of conflict, of the old behavior that made him a liability on set, word will spread fast. Everybody's rooting for him, but they're also ready to jump ship at the first sign of trouble. The 3-month London shoot, scheduled for the winter of 2026, is being watched by the entire industry, not because people care about another Christmas Carol, but because this is the test case. If Ebenezer succeeds, if audiences show up and the controversy fades, other studios will follow, the floodgates will open. Depp will be back, not just as a working actor, but as a major star. If it fails, if the boycott is real and the box office is soft, then the message will be equally clear. There are some lines that audiences won't let Hollywood cross, no matter how much talent or money is involved. In the final analysis, there is one final layer to this story that makes it almost surreal. The first footage of Depp as Scrooge was revealed at CinemaCon in April 2026. Witnesses described him as nearly unrecognizable, buried under heavy prosthetics, gray hair, a sharp nose, looking less like the heartthrob of the 90s and more like a creature from a Tim Burton film. The transformation is physical, but it's also symbolic. Johnny Depp, the man who built a career on beauty and charisma, is now hiding behind a mask to play a man who must learn to see himself clearly. And maybe that's the real story here. Not whether Hollywood is forgiving too easily, but whether redemption is something that can be bought, performed, and packaged for holiday audiences. Paramount is betting $50 million that the answer is yes. The audience will decide if they're right. In November 2026, families will walk into theaters across America and around the world. They will see a man who was once the biggest star on the planet playing a man who was once the worst person in London. They will watch him be haunted by his past, forced to confront the pain he caused, and offered a second chance he hasn't earned. Some will cheer, some will walk out, and nobody will be able to pretend that it's just a movie, because in Hollywood, nothing is ever just a movie. It's always a message, and this time, the message is worth $10 million.